Rob, do you have a light?
Too bad.
Mickey? There's a raucous atmosphere on this set. I don't like it.
Oh, let's lose it.
Are we about to start
McDonald's
this?
cup.
I can't deal. When we made Evil Dead, I wanted to do something that...
Ready?
Look, what do you want? When I first rode down the shore... Can you give the answers in French?
You rolling?
Rolling.
Ready? Action?
Action.
Thank you. Sam, what are the origins of... Robert Tapper, the producer, and myself, and Bruce Campbell wanted to make a film that would definitely entertain the horror crowd. Because we had sat in on a lot of drive-in movies and a lot of cheap horror theaters in Detroit during shows, and sometimes, most of the time, we would watch film and they didn't deliver enough. That's what we felt. So we wanted to make one that would really knock them with a punch. Robert Tappert, Bruce Campbell, and myself all bought business suits, matching briefcases, and dropped out of school. We worked as waiters, busboys, janitors, cab drivers. Then we hired attorneys to put together a legal offering, saying, in legal terms, if X person invests X amount of money, they own X percentage in this movie that we're going to make. We made a Super 8 pilot of the film we intended to make, and that was called Within the Woods. And what I did was, took the screenplay for Evil Dead, took a number of the elements from it, and wrote a very short story. We filmed it, and it ran about 30 minutes, and we used it to show the investors exactly what kind of film they'd be buying into, because we had no track record, and they needed some sort of tangible proof that we could in fact make a movie of professional quality.
We had dentists, a couple of dentists go in. We had some real estate people, but we went to absolutely anybody who was financially capable of losing all their money.
When we got down to Tennessee, the Tennessee Film Commission, who had been scouting locations for us, told us that day that the cabin we intended to shoot in had dropped through. The location was no longer available. So we stalled and we were shooting everything else but what took place inside the cabin. And like 90% of the picture takes place in the cabin, so we were really stalling. We finally did find a place. It was an old place in this little valley surrounded by miles of woods near Morristown, Tennessee. This area had been used as grazing land. In fact, these cows and cattle had knocked down the door of this place, and there was about 6 inches of cow dung. We had the cameraman and the production assistants and everyone was just shoveling out cow dung for a week, and we ripped out walls, tore out the ceiling, made a studio out of the place. The place was miles really from civilization, so it was very difficult to get a truck in there to hook up power, but we did it. We couldn't afford to bring in water, obviously, so we didn't have any running water. All the water had to be brought there down this mile-long mud road that turned to mud soup. So when it got very cold in there, because we didn't have any heating system except the fireplace, there was really no way to warm up. There was no warm water for anything, and the whole place eventually got covered in Caro syrup blood, and it really gets sticky because there's so much blood in the picture, and bile and green, red, blue, any color. The whole place eventually had a coat of sticky Caro syrup over it, everything. And anytime you wanted to touch the camera, you had to turn on the coffee machine, because we had enough water for a coffee thing, and wash your hands in this scalding coffee. I remember doing that many times. It was horrible. And then grab the camera, and then you pick up something, damn, and you get the stuff on your hands again. So that was fun.
Tell the story of the cabin, the horror story.
The horror story? Well, it's funny you should say that, John, because there is, in fact, a little-known horror story that takes place in the cabin that we shot Evil Dead in. This cabin was built about 100 years ago, and the man who built it died maybe a week after he built the place. And it's located in this valley surrounded by these mountains that have an incredible amount of iron ore in them, so that during thunderstorms, most of the lightning bolts are attracted to this valley. So it's really an incredible thing to see when you're there during a storm. Well, no one lived in this cabin for the next 20 years. And it was probably around 1910 or so when a family of 3 moved into the place. A mother, daughter, and a grandmother. So really 3 generations of women. One night during a thunderstorm, this little girl woke up and she was scared by all the lightning happening around the cabin. So she ran into her mother's room, and pulling back the covers to climb into bed with her, she found that her mother was dead. Well, she was so frightened she ran screaming into her grandmother's room, and somehow that same evening she had died also during the night. And they still don't really know why both of these women would simultaneously die in this place. Well, the little girl ran out into the storm about 4 miles to the nearest farmhouse through this raging thunderstorm out into the night, and they found her screaming, banging on their doors, and they brought her inside and they got the story from her. Well, they took care of her after that, and no one lived in the cabin. The people of the farmhouse raised this little girl. She had never been the same since, and during thunderstorms, she would oftentimes wander off from this cabin, and they would find her wandering around in the woods. As we were shooting, the fella from this farm came by, and he told us the story of exactly what happened and how his folks had taken in this little girl who was now a very old woman, and that because there had been this thunderstorm the night before, he was looking for this woman because it's possible she had returned to this cabin. And as far as we know, they never found the woman while we were down there shooting, and she could still be roaming those woods around Morristown, Tennessee. The strangest part of the story is that a week after we left the cabin in Tennessee, as reported by the Tennessee Film Commission, a bolt of lightning hit the cabin and it burned to the ground. The most difficult shot for me personally in the picture was, it's a track beginning upside down and it goes over Bruce Campbell's head, and then the shot ends right side up. And for that, I had to be hanging from the ceiling by this, what do you call this, underneath your knee, on a rafter. So I was actually hanging upside down with the camera like that. Bruce walked toward me and I had to actually pick my body up with my legs and then come back down. It's very difficult to explain, but it's actually what happened. We had a weird experience that we were shooting the very first shot of the movie. Tim Filer, the cameraman, and myself went to this field to get a very long shot. We were using a telephoto lens of this bridge that the car is crossing. The kids are coming up to the cabin. Well, the whole field was filled with cows, and there was one bull, and it wouldn't let us into the field. There was a barbed wire electric fence, and you had to crawl under the thing, but the thing wouldn't let you get anywhere near its cows. So we had one of the production assistants sing to this bull, to distract it, and we snuck around down this hill where the bull couldn't see us, snuck under the fence, passed the camera gear through, set up the shot. We were starting to shoot. The bull is coming, the bull! We heard some screaming, and what he was screaming was, the bull is coming. And that means that there's a bull coming towards you. We looked up on the hill and there was a bull charging us. Well, I don't have a good story about grabbing the negative or anything like that. I just ran for my life, and he chased us around trees, and we couldn't get out because the fence was electrified. It's not something you can like grab and climb over in a minute. You have to actually stop and crawl under this thing. It was a nightmare. It got very cold. I think that was the most difficult part about the shoot. One time, in fact, it was so cold that I couldn't stand the slow torture of freezing to death so slowly. So I actually crawled outside and laid down to die in the cold. But Rob, the poor bastard, covered me with a blanket, and here I am today.
What visual style were you going for? Describe the visual style.
While I was shooting the picture, I wasn't particularly after any visual style. Just wanted to put the camera in a place that would best get across that particular piece of information for that particular shot. I would take into consideration, one, what's the best way to see the object. Two, will it cut with the shot before and after it. Three, is the placement of the camera or the movement of the camera, is that the same feeling we want to get across with what the image is? Are they one and the same, or is it helping the image? And based on those questions, those factors determine where and how the thing was shot.
How do you shock the audience?
I guess it can be done all sorts of ways. But what I did in Evil Dead is what I think everyone must try and do, basically, and that is build up some amount of suspense or fear on the audience part that something is going to happen, not exactly letting them know when it's going to happen, and then letting it happen in force. So that they get on the edge of their seats and you hit them. And sometimes you can hit them twice or 3 times. And sometimes you can get them on the edge of their seat, and then pretend that nothing's going to happen, so they go back down, but they're still tense, and then you hit them with a shock. And that's instead of a slap to the face that they're braced for, that's like more like a punch to the stomach. It's weird, but it actually is assaulting when shocks hit you. It is for me when I'm in the audience. I look at it like, ugh, like, ow. You know, it's almost like pain. It's a thrill, you know.
In Evil Dead, you achieved a lot of camera movement in that rugged terrain. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the fact that we shot the thing in 16 millimeter gave us an incredible amount of movement. Rob's saying I shouldn't mention 16 millimeter. Because of the lightweight equipment we had down there, it enabled us to move the camera around a great deal with very little difficulty. Tim mounted the camera on this board, what we call a shaky cam. And we had different versions of it. One was about this big. And with it, the cameraman can run very fast. It absorbs a great deal of the shocks as opposed to holding the camera like this, where it's a little more difficult to keep smooth. And to get the effect of it roaming the woods, we used this thing, the shaky cam. The other version of it was about a board 15 feet long. We had 2 men, 1 on each side, camera in the middle. It was the axis point. So they could move as much as they wanted, but this point in the middle would move very little. And with these different devices, we were able to move the camera around in strange and hopefully new-looking ways.
Evil Dead 1, which broke all financial records in the cinema and as a home video when released 4 years ago. Yet it was attacked by some as being no more than a video nasty, and the Department of Public Prosecutions took court action to ban it.
I think it probably has all the charm and sophistication of a speech by Joseph Goebbels.
I mean, in Evil Dead, there's some shots of a woman being battered round the head with a post. I mean, is that funny?
Is that any worse than watching the news at 6 o'clock and somebody hitting somebody with a stick?
I don't agree with that guy over there that it's just for kicks. What it basically boils down to is that guy that writes about it and that guy that makes a profit out of it. And all this violence against women and all the blood and the gut is for profit. It's basically profit.
Well, Sam, presumably it is for profit. I mean, presumably you make it so that people actually pay to go and see it.
No, I make the pictures primarily to entertain the audience. That is my goal. And
I don't want to stop you making films, my friend. I mean, if you want to make films like that, I mean, go ahead. What I think is really objectionable is to dress it up as entertainment. We're not talking about the horror films of 30 or 40 years ago, which were removed from reality.
no, they were just as outrageous then as
yeah,
these
but
are
showing
now.
these.
I make pictures to entertain people, and horror movies are specifically designed to scare people. And possibly, it's a good thing that you can sit in a theater and get your adrenaline pumping and scream and have a hooting good time. My movies are not realistic violence. I have walls bleeding orange, blue, black, yellow, and green paint. And I've got skulls that fly around and spirits that zoom about a cabin. It's it's kind of more surrealistic, I think, than a realistic portrayal of violence.
So what do you think would have happened if the movie hadn't been a hit?
Well, then I would be selling air conditioners again, which I'm pretty good at.